Hey, let's take a minute here to talk about retirement and a couple of different accounts that you might have heard of, but I want to go into a little bit more in depth and explain what each one is. Many of us will save for our retirement inside of a retirement vehicle. So I want you to imagine that you have a bucket. In that bucket, you're going to be putting some money. Retirement really isn't just an age. It's about having enough of funds in place that you can actually go and do what you love. It does not mean that you stop working. What it means is that you are in a place that you can now focus on the things that you are really passionate about. And sometimes when you follow your passion, people think about making less money, or you have to take a lesser income because of that. But the reality is that if you follow your passion and you're helping people in what you're passionate about, most times that's where your greatest income actually comes from. Let's imagine that in the first bucket, we're going to label that the 401k. Most of us work at an employer and we have the opportunity to use a 401k. That 401k has a special type of protection. And that protection is that you don't have to pay taxes now on anything you put in there, but you have to pay taxes later. Think about it as an armor almost for that bucket. And that bucket's power, the 401k, is that you don't have to pay taxes now. The thought process is that you can keep all the tax money that you would have paid and you don't have to pay it now. You can actually use that to grow your money, and then later you'll be able to pay your taxes. The next type is the Roth 401k. Now this one only came on the scene a number of years ago, so you may or may not be using that. Maybe you're splitting some of your money in there, maybe not. Roth 401k, it's a bucket, but think about it this time as you're putting money that's already been taxed in there. But the superpower of the Roth 401k is you don't have to pay taxes ever again on money that's inside of that bucket, even the growth that's in there. And again, these are not necessarily investments. These are the buckets that the investments will be held in. Hopping on to the next type, you would have an IRA. Now, this is not an employer-sponsored one. This is where maybe you're self-employed, maybe your employer doesn't offer a retirement program, or maybe you just don't like what's inside of the retirement program, and you went out and you just got an IRA. Now, most banks market as individual retirement account. It's actually not quite the case. It's the individual retirement arrangement. Little technicality, but just keep in mind, it's not an investment, it's a bucket that your investments go into. Standard IRA, you put in post-tax money, like the Roth, except the standard IRA grows tax deferred, similar to the original 401k. So its superpower is similar, it's tax deferred. You'll pay taxes on it down the road. Then you have the Roth IRA. And just like the Roth 401k, you can put monies inside the protection of a Roth IRA and you will not owe any taxes ever again. But the money that you put in will have been taxed. We're going to get into a little bit what some of those things might be. If you are, by the way, employed by a nonprofit, most times you will have a 403b, and those are very, very, very similar to the 401k, except it's a specific sector for nonprofit or government employees. Okay, so let's get into why you might choose one over the other. For me personally, I get really excited when I hear the word Roth. It's the assurance that what I've already paid taxes on will not be taxed again. So we don't know what tax rates will be doing. The reality is the taxes have been steadily decreasing for quite a number of years. So we don't know what taxes will do. But I like the steady idea of, hey, the taxes are already taken care of. I don't need to think about that again. Roth is kind of exciting to me because I put in the post-tax money. I already paid the 25% or 30% or whatever it is Uncle Sam wants. But now all of the money that's in there is going to grow tax-free. I'll never have to pay taxes on that again. And when you think about the fact that if you put $100,000 in over the next 10 or 20 years of your life into a retirement fund, that might grow to being $1 million. And we're talking about now 25% of $1 million. So we're having a $250,000 tax conversation right now today. And the thing with the Roth versus the traditional is often you think about, well, if I put in a traditional, I will put in more dollars than with the Roth. But I don't want you to do that. If you do Roth or traditional, I want you to put the exact same number of dollars in, and then that is eliminating that conversation about which one is better. The reality is that by putting it into Roth, you actually end up putting just a little bit more money in. The other thing that I really like about the Roth, if you have that option, is there's not a required minimum distribution. What does that mean? Required minimum distribution is the idea that when you turn to the age 70 and a half on a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, the government says, hey, you have money in there that you haven't paid taxes on yet, so we need you to start pulling that out from behind that tax curtain so that we can charge the taxes and get our money. And it's really intended to keep people from being able to transition wealth from one generation to the next generation without it ever having been taxed. I don't like to be told when I have to take something when I don't have to. The reality is, for most people, an RMD or a required minimum distribution probably is not a big deal. Either way, choosing the type of vehicle is not everything. After you've chosen what vehicle you're going to use, now you want to think about how you're going to invest it. So you might want to hop over to my video where it talks about choosing the funds in your 401k, and the same principles apply to choosing funds for your 401k as it does to choosing for a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. Please like and subscribe, comment down below,